Yeah, man, I don't know about this one, ESPN. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin. Thank you very much for clicking on this video. Look, let's be honest here. Last night's loss was absolutely brutal, right? That is a loss that the Red Sox need to win every single time. The fact that they lost it, incredibly disheartening. But instead of taking it out on the Red Sox today, we're going to be taking it out a little bit on ESPN, who came out with an article and a trade prediction for the Red Sox that I think is absolutely wild, especially when we talk about the context of where the Red Sox are at right now. The trade I'm talking about comes from David Schoenfield of ESPN, who put together, in my opinion, a way too early prediction for every MLB team's trade deadline this year. And in this article, he predicted that the Red Sox are going to trade their number 3, or really their number 2 prospect at this point, and overall number 11 prospect in Major League Baseball, Marcelo Meyer, to the Miami Marlins for Sandy Alcantara. Now, you may be sitting there saying, well, wait a second, Corbin, Sandy Alcantara is a dog. He's one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. Why wouldn't the Red Sox think about giving up a guy like Marcelo Meyer to get him? And honestly, if it was 2022 or 2023, I would probably have agreed with you, right? Because by that point, Sandy Alcantara had established himself as a legitimate not only Cy Young winner, but top talent in Major League Baseball. Between 2019 and 2023, he had a 3.30 ERA with a 3.71 FIP and a 1.31 ERA+. He had multiple seasons where he pitched over 200 innings. The dude was a stud on the mound. A 1-for-1 swap with Sandy actually could make some sense with 2 more years of control. There is a legitimate argument to be made right there. The problem is that it isn't 2023, it's 2025, and the Sandy we're seeing today is much different than the Sandy we saw back in those seasons. Not only did Sandy Alcantara have a little bit of a rough year in 2023, he also missed all of 2024 with Tommy John surgery, and coming into this year, he just simply has not been good. There's no other way to put it. This season, he has an 8.31 ERA with a 5.58 FIP, a 1.654 WHIP, which is 1.6-ish batters reaching base every single inning he's on the mound. His strikeout per nines are at a career low of 6.6 per 9 innings. His walks are all the way up to 5.9 per 9 innings. He's almost walking as many dudes as he's striking out right now. His hits per 9 are at a career high, and right now, Sandy Alcantara is just not a good pitcher. To put it in Red Sox perspective right now, Tanner Houck is off to a really rough start in 2025, right? We all know that. We all understand that. He has not been good this season. His metrics are still better than what Sandy Alcantara is doing on the mound through his first 6 starts in 2025, right? That is the level that we are talking about for Sandy Alcantara. To trade Marcelo Meyer, who had a slow start in AAA but is now slashing .270 with a .324 on base percentage and a .520 slug for a 118 WRC+, throw in 7 home runs and a league-leading 34 RBIs. As well, this seems to be an incredibly risky move for the Red Sox. And when I say it's an incredibly risky move, I mean it's incredibly risky for a couple of different reasons. One is the obvious one, right? We don't know what Sandy is going to look like this season. He's an extremely talented pitcher, and there's a good chance that at some point he figures himself out, right? Especially coming off of Tommy John. A big thing that happens with a lot of pitchers who get this Tommy John surgery and end up coming back is their command is off. It's very clear that that is happening to Sandy Alcantara. Once he figures that out a bit, there's probably a pretty good chance those numbers look a whole lot better. The question really becomes, and where the risk is how much better does he actually get? Is it back to that Cy Young caliber pitcher that we saw in 22, or is it more so that 2023 pitcher, which was a slightly above 4 ERA, right? A barely average pitcher in Major League Baseball, about 13% above league average production 2024. That's still a solid pitcher, but that's not really worth giving up a top 10 prospect in the sport, or really a top 15, I should say, prospect in the sport, right? If you're going to trade Marcelo for a starting pitcher at this point, in my opinion, it's got to be for more of a sure thing. Well, it's got to be for someone who's going to make a legitimate, immediate impact on the Boston Red Sox. And right now, it's just simply impossible to say that Sandy Alcantara is a guy who you know is going to give you really good stuff. Even if you think Sandy's going to bounce back a bit, we don't know what that bounce back ends up looking like, right? We talk all the time about Walker Buehler. No one expects Buehler to end up as what did he have, like a 2.70 ERA in his season where he almost won a Cy Young? No one is expecting that from him anymore. Why should we expect the same thing from Sandy, right? I sit here and I just can't wrap my head around the Red Sox taking that big of a risk with one of the best prospects in Major League Baseball. That's the obvious risk involved here with the trade of Sandy Alcantara. The other one is a little bit of a lesser known, I would say, but immediately pops to mind, and that is the fact that right now, the Red Sox starting shortstop is Trevor Story. Now, Story in general is a great player, right? I'm a huge Trevor Story guy. Yes, he's going through a cold streak right now, but when he's hot, he's scalding hot at the plate, and he can be a player that impacts his team on quite literally every single level imaginable, right? Every single part of this game, Trevor Story can make a legitimate impact in. The problem is, right, and as much as I'm a fan of Trevor Story, he is yet to finish a full season at the big league level with the Boston Red Sox. Every single year he's been here, he has ended up on the IL. What you're doing in trading Marcelo Meyer at this point in the season is that you are getting rid of your shortstop depth. Last year, when Trevor Story went down, what ended up happening? It was a bit of a carousel over at shortstop, right? You had David Hamilton, you had Romy Gonzalez, you had Pablo Reyes, you had Ceddanne Rafaela, you had Nick Sogard over there at some points, right? You had a bunch of different players playing over in that position. What it did is it ended up hurting your team more than it helped, right? Obviously, losing Trevor Story in general is going to hurt your team, but it really, really took a turn defensively last season for the Red Sox when Trevor Story went down. This year, Trevor Story goes down. Well, wait a second. You've got a top 15 prospect in the sport ready and willing to take over that position and be a full-time shortstop immediately. You don't have to switch around your infield. You don't have to make Ceddanne a shortstop again. You don't have to try David Hamilton out there for the 30th time and expect different results. You don't have to have a guy like Sogard, Campbell, or Romy take over that position on a full-time basis, right? You have a legitimate solution to that potential problem. Getting rid of that, in my opinion, with everything that's happened with Trevor Story over the last couple of years, before anything actually does happen, to me, is just an incredibly high risk, right? It's just an incredibly high risk, and I don't know that the reward at the end of the day is worth doing that to the Boston Red Sox. It's an extremely complicated conversation to have because of the talent Sandy does have, but I don't know, man. The risks are just really, really big here. Now, all this isn't to say that I wouldn't love Sandy Alcantara on the Boston Red Sox, right? Again, you talk about what that ceiling could look like. You talk about the fact that he has 2 more years of team control, basically, on a very team-friendly contract. That's a really, really appealing pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. I'm just saying it feels a bit premature to throw a name like Marcelo Meyer into this ring, considering everything with Sandy going on. Now, I also think it's a little bit premature to even assume that the Red Sox are going to need that pitching, that legitimate pitching depth come the trade deadline, right? Because there's so many questions left to answer with this Red Sox rotation. We just simply don't know what it's going to look like by the end of July. You talk about where the rotation is right now and look at all the question marks in it. How is Tanner Houck is he going to rebound this season that he's having so far? Can Lucas Giolito continue to produce the way he produced in his first start back on the big league roster, right? He looked great last night until he ran out of gas, considering it was his first start since 2023. How do guys like Hunter Dobbins and Richard Fitts, how do they fit in with this Red Sox roster? Not to mention guy like Patrick Sandoval, who was signed, who's still rehabbing, who's predicted to come back around that point of the season this year, probably in mid-August sometime. Are you talking about all of these factors here, and you combine that with Garrett Crochet, who's a legitimate ace, Walker Buehler, who's looked extremely consistent, and Brian Bayo, who's looked extremely consistent in his first couple of starts, and there's a legitimate chance that by the trade deadline, the Red Sox don't really need to add a starting pitcher like Sandy Alcantara, right? They could focus more on maybe some bullpen depth or maybe some depth at first base, right? You have all these other options here that could end up needing to be filled that you don't need to give up a top prospect in Major League Baseball for. So as much as I would love to see Sandy Alcantara in a Red Sox uniform, and as much as I do think he could still be a valuable pitcher at some point, I just think given all the risk involved and given the fact that Marcelo has such a high ceiling right now, I think this trade is a little bit of a wild idea. I think it's an unrealistic idea, and I honestly, at this point, think it would be a dumb idea for the Red Sox to make this move. Now, if it were for someone else in the Red Sox system, say as much as I love him and as much as I think he's going to be a fantastic player, Mikey Romero, I think then you have a little bit of a different conversation, right? But for Marcelo, yeah, I just don't see this being a smart move for the Red Sox on any level, unless all of a sudden Sandy Alcantara over his next 10-ish starts turns into prime Pedro Martinez, right? Unless that happens, I just don't see this making sense. But maybe I'm the one who doesn't make sense. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about this trade? What do you think about this prediction? Would you make this trade if you were the Boston Red Sox, and why? Let me know all your thoughts down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you guys want to listen instead of watch these episodes, all you got to do is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.